This is DJ.
And this is Ish.
And this is
Season 6 of
Pero Let Me Tell You.
And at the fantastic Tinta y Cafe here, you can hear the birds chirping, the sun is shining, hace un calor de carajo. But I am here with today's guest, and today's guest honestly is continuing a very fantastic tradition we have on this show of inviting people on who've named things names we wish we had thought of ourselves. So I have with us today debut author, Tita Ramirez, whose book is, and I again, when your publicist reached out to me, like, do you want to interview her? And told me that the name of your book is Tell It to Me Singing. I was like, can I talk to her now?
What's her phone number?
As the email's being sent out. Like, it is so perfect. Like, the title, Dímelo Cantando. I mean, come on. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
But damn you for being so creative. I mean, the title is fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It has gotten a lot of interest from the Cuban community. Pretty much anyone who sees it, who's Cuban American or Cuban, is like, what's going on with that title?
It's almost the epitome of like transliteration, right?
Yeah.
Like, now you said anybody who's Cuban gets it.
Yeah.
Do white people know what it means? Have you encountered? Because you're on a bit of a tour now doing readings.
Yeah.
I'm assuming there's a lot of Latinos who show up to your readings, but
yes.
Does any of the American audience kind of be like, well, what is the meaning of this title?
I've had a couple questions, and I actually wrote an essay about this.
Oh, okay.
That I published in a journal called Lit Hub. So that's out there in the world for anybody who wants to go find it. Yes and no. They kind of they find it interesting, but they don't really understand that it's got a second layer. So whenever I get questions, I try to explain the second layer. And it's actually, there's a line in the book, there's a moment in the book where one of the characters calls another character, the main character calls another character, and he answers the phone, tell it to me singing. He answers it in English. And we understand that that's an old joke between them. And it helps us understand that they have a connection, that their relationship is something that's not just like a one-off kind of thing.
Right.
That's something they've been saying to each other for years. And it also speaks to the fact that they're both Cuban American, but they're second gen, and how we second geners tend to speak more in English than in Spanish, but we live in a world that's Spanglish, so it's kind of all the same.
Oh, yeah. I
and
don't
then
know what you're talking about. No, never.
Yeah,
Miami, never.
What are you talking about? Yeah, exactly. And the book is a lot about storytelling. So the idea of telling it to me. There's actually a moment in the book where the main character says to her mother, who has been slowly revealing some pretty deep, dark secrets.
Crazy deep, dark secrets.
Where she says to her mom, start from the beginning and tell me everything.
Right.
And so it's very much a story about storytelling. It's a story about figuring out your own story, rewriting your own story, trying to figure out what do I want my story to be. And so I just thought it fit. Yeah. Yeah,
no, it totally fit. And I say that as somebody who, like, on occasion will say to people, like, oh my God, by casualty, I was at the store. Like, as opposed to, like, de casualidad. And I know it's wrong. I know it does not mean the same thing, but I'm that guy.
Yeah. Oh, and you take that out of Miami and people are like, what?
Oh, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. We had a linguistics professor from FIU on who was talking about Miami English and, things like, I'm going to get off the car.
Oh, yeah. And how it's become a real dialect.
It's become a real
It's so
language.
amazing how academia is accepting this now as a real dialect.
Yeah. And you're a professor, right?
Yeah, I am a professor.
You're an English professor? Or?
I am. I teach mainly creative writing, but I do a little bit of literature when I get the chance, and then a little bit of college writing, which is like that first English class that we all have to take, what we used to call freshman comp. And I like to call, welcome to the world.
Everything's gotten a revamp.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you're from Miami.
Yeah.
But you are half Cuban.
Yeah.
And half, I believe your mother's from Kentucky?
She was born in Kentucky. She was raised in Tennessee and West Virginia.
Okay, so like...
She's an American
She's a
girl.
Southern girl.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Although she wouldn't tell you that. It's so funny because she doesn't have like a really deep Southern accent or
Really?
anything. And she's like... Tennessee is absolutely the South, but West Virginia is kind of a strange place that she
generally speaking, or just?
No. It's actually a beautiful place.
It's gorgeous. Yeah.
It's gorgeous. I drove through there once to get to a wedding I had to go to in Ohio, and I thought I was going to die because the hills are like.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
I mean, they're beautiful and also very hard to drive. No, but my mom's Anglo, but she's like an honorary Cuban. She was married to my father for 13 years. She speaks, she's not fluent by any means, but she can get by if she really needs to.
Se defiende, as we say.
Yeah, se defiende, totally. And she actually worked, she lived in Miami for 20 years and was like the CFO of a corporation that a construction company. So she could talk like business Spanish all day long and construction business Spanish all day long.
And if she worked in construction, she can probably talk like a sailor too in Spanish.
Probably, and English,
yes. She can curse with the best of them in Spanish.
Totally.
Yeah,
and she can dance a salsa like nobody's business.
Damn
and make
right.
a pot of frijoles like you don't even know. Yeah,
shit. You know what? That's right. You are honorary, Mama Ramirez.
Yeah, exactly.
So, excuse me. But so you've been away from Miami though for a bit now. We were talking earlier, and I love the fact that we basically had like a whole pre-interview moment where she had finally her café con leche and her tostada cubana, which I have to say, I love the tostada here, but I have a feeling it's not what you had in mind when you ordered the tostada cubana. Because it wasn't like the cute, like the flauta.
It wasn't dripping in butter in the way that I expected.
Right. So after this, if you want, we can go to. There's another baker around the corner. I'll send you home with clogged arteries.
I got to bring stuff to my kids or they'll kill me.
Yeah. Well, there's a big old tray of pastelitos.
That's what I'm doing.
There you go. So, you've been away for a minute from Miami. I think, was it 20, 25 years?
It's been about 25 years, yeah.
And yet your novel is set with, predominantly in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a moment of it that's set in Costa Rica, but predominantly I would say like 85% takes place here in Miami. How did you find the Miami voice? Again, you grew up here. Yeah. But you've been away for 25 years and you're in North Carolina, which is not even, some would say like the big city element, right? If you're going from Miami to like a New York, a Chicago, you can maybe still get that little vibe and figure out how to tweak it. But how was that process for you?
It was memory. Okay. It was visiting, regularly. My father and sister still live here. Okay. And so... I come down, a couple times a year.
Okay, so you haven't lived here for a while, but you're frequently here enough that it's... You've seen the changes, but you get the vibe still in you.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Miami girl lives inside of me. You can take the girl out of Miami, but you can't take the Miami out of the girl. And it's really funny, like... I don't think she's there, and then something will go down, and my husband will give me the look. My husband's Anglo, and he loves to like learn all about the culture, and and he'll just give me the like, your Miami's coming out right there. I don't know. I think like it's on the hard drive. It's been on the hard drive forever, and also that's what fiction writers do, right? We imagine worlds. We immerse ourselves, in our imagination. We do tons of research. One of the reasons it took me so long to write this book is that I've done so much research of varying kinds.
By the way,
it shows.
It shows.
Oh my God!
No, again, you're from Miami, and you're half Cuban, and so obviously a lot of it just comes from like, I know this stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
But there were elements in there that I applaud you for, because it's without making it sound dry, a little history lesson. Mm-hmm. There were those little history lesson moments where you're talking about our culture, but then you're explaining it within the context of historical events. Yeah. And I think that's so important because, again, you didn't have to do that for me.
Right.
Right? Because I'm from here. We share a culture. I know.
Right. When I say Bay of Pigs, you're like, I know what that means.
I know what that means. Yeah. And next page, right?
Yeah.
But there are people who don't. Yeah. And I love that you didn't just assume that, I'm only writing for this, group of people.
Right.
I love that, and I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do is to kind of figure out like how much of that stuff do I want to leave in, how much do I want to explain. There was stuff that I became really fascinated with, stuff from our history that I didn't know very much about, that I got really fascinated with, and that the main character Monica ends up getting fascinated with. That was where I kind of decided, let's go a little deeper on that. And that was all the stuff about the anti-Castro groups that were so busy, if you will.
They were
militant.
Militant. They weren't busy. They were militant.
In the late 70s, early 80s, here in Miami, in New York, in New Jersey. I mean, it's really fascinating. That's a lot of the research I did. There's a character in the book who has some connections to all that stuff, and I cut actually a lot of what I had. Yeah, because it was taking it in a direction that it didn't.
Okay.
That's when it was starting to get a little too in the weeds, you know. So I pulled it back from there and just kind of thought about like, okay, what the main character is Monica. What would Monica be fascinated with? What would she find if she were looking into this? And how can I explain that? And really more than anything, it's about how Monica feels about that information that she uncovers and about the fact that there are people in her family who are connected to this kind of stuff.
Right.
And also like something I didn't know very much about. I knew that there was a lot of counter-revolutionary activity in Cuba right after the revolution and, right after Castro took over. My father was actually involved in that stuff. That's how he ended up here in the States.
Really?
Yeah. His story is really interesting. He's a Pedro Pan.
Oh, so is my dad.
Oh, is that right?
Yep.
Along with the Pedro Pans.
Yeah.
And the reason he ended up being a Pedro Pan is because he was involved in counter-revolutionary activities in Cuba at age 16.
Okay, so so close to the cutoff.
Exactly. And he was like doing stuff that was not legal, not okay, but that he of course believed very heavily in, right. And he almost got caught. Essentially, someone, my grandfather's employee, was, a believer in the revolution,
right.
But he was also very loyal to my grandfather. They had worked together for years, and he found out that my father had been found out. And he went to my grandfather and said, they know that Seferino is working as a contrarrevolucionario.
Right.
You need to get him out of here.
So he tipped him off?
Yeah, he tipped him off. He said, you need to get him out of here because they are going to pick him up. And my father was old enough that who knows what would have happened to him.
Oh, they would have put him in a jail for...
For sure they would have put him in jail.
At least, minimum.
Exactly, So my grandfather scooped him up, put him on a plane, and he was the only member of their immediate family that came here. My grandmother, grandfather, aunt, and uncle never moved to the United States.
Wow.
Yeah, my father was the only one out of his immediate family that ever came here. And that was in 1960, I want to say 2. If I get this number wrong, I'm sorry, Papi, if you're listening. He was 16 years old. He came to Miami. He lived in an orphanage because we didn't have any connections here close enough for him to go live with them.
Oh, so there was no one to reclamarlo. I can't think of the word in English.
Yeah.
Reclamarlo, yeah.
Yeah, there was nobody. You know how they would come and they could live with a family member or whatever. But the kids who didn't have a sponsor or whatever it would be called were put into orphanages, and he was put into an orphanage.
Was he in the orphanage down south, down here in
Matecumbe?
Yeah, Matecumbe. Yeah.
And then eventually got placed out of that orphanage into one in Kentucky, which is how eventually he met my American mom in Kentucky. We do the whole thing, yeah.
Wow.
But I got really interested in the idea that, so I knew there were people working against Castro in the late 60s, right. Or, sorry, mid to late 60s. What I didn't know was that stuff was still going on in the 70s. And Monica's mom and dad are of that generation.
Right, yeah.
Where they would have been young in the late 70s. And there was all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, it didn't just end.
It didn't just end. And I did all this research and all this, just learned all this really cool stuff, and then stumbled upon the fact that there was crazy stuff happening in the States. Bombing, shootings, just nuts.
Yeah, welcome to Miami. A lot of it. There's a book I can't remember right now that is details the story of all those happenings here in like you said, in Jersey and Miami with the end. I'll look it up. I actually have it on my night table.
Oh, I need to know that book. Yeah.
I'll send it to you when I get home. Yeah, for sure. And it's a nonfiction.
Yes, I want to see that.
It's fascinating as hell. But excuse me, and I told you this before, as someone who consumed your book on a 5-hour flight back from LA, I could not put it down. I love hearing this about your dad because, number one, I love hearing people's stories. And I think it's important that we always share our history and to ensure that it does not die with our parents and grandparents. But also, it now helps me color a little bit the story of, and I don't remember the names of the characters right now, but the mother character, Mita, it colors a little bit more of her story for me, right? Where it's like, I understand now, you brought some of yourself, by way of your father, to the character. And I think that's so telling for me. I had such a love-hate relationship with your protagonists.
You had told me this before.
Because I know this girl so well, being a Miami boy, right? Like, I know her so well that she is the type of girl that I like her, we're friends, but sometimes she infuriates the hell out of me. You know, igual with her ex-boyfriend. Like, and please don't take this the wrong way, to me, he comes off as the epitome of the Miami fuckboy.
Yeah.
But that's also because I grew up in Miami. And so, but what I love about that is the specificity that you obviously put into these characters, where they did not feel generic to me.
That's like, I can't tell you I am awash in relief hearing that. That's what every fiction writer wants to hear, is that they didn't come off like generic stock.
No, like, I've worked with Monica. You know what I mean? Like, she's been the girl at the office, you know. I've met oh my god, ¿cómo se llama el ex?
Manny.
I've met Manny at parties. Like, I know these people.
Yeah.
Her brother, Monica's brother.
Yeah. Pablo.
Without getting too much into I'll share this off mic with you, but like, reminds me of my uncle.
Interesting.
Certain elements of him, it's like, as I'm reading it, I'm like, yeah, I lived this by way of my mother, you know, like, so you wrote these characters in a way that the casual reader will probably just read it and be like, oh, these are great characters. It's a fun way to spend, you know, an afternoon and it's lying by the pool or whatever in the summer. But for me, it's like, you wrote about my people.
That's what I was trying to do.
You know? And it's not easy to do. Look, writing's not easy to do in general. Yeah. And even people who have the best of intentions and know their culture, sometimes it doesn't happen. And sometimes it's because of editorial interference. And sometimes, you know, again, and I understand that, again, as a marketer, sometimes it's like, guys, this is way too niche. We need to broaden it and all that.
Great call, yeah.
But no, I know these characters.
Oh, I'm so glad to. Like, that's really relieving, especially as someone who's a half breed. You know, like, I'm a little bit nervous. What's that?
All right, Cher.
I mean, you know, I know
she did show up here on a white horse. With the headdress. God. It was very inappropriate. I told her no. She had to go home and change.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We're not doing that anymore.
No.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's bicultural, I do have like reservations, and I always feel like, am I getting it right? Am I Cuban enough to write this Cuban story? I mean, that was a thing for me, for sure. And it's strange. I mean, we were talking earlier about like, when you live in Miami, here's our garbage truck.
This thing has gone around the block, like, I think it's the 4th time it has come by. We literally like put off the interview for like a minute. Oh, pa que pase. And you know what? At this point, it's the 3rd star of the show.
That's right. Yeah. We're here. Readers, listen to me. Listeners, support your local Dade County garbage collection.
Yes, absolutely. Leave water out for them.
Yes, please. I just lost my train of thought, of course. Being bicultural and not living in Miami and feeling like did I have the right to tell this story, you know? And so it's heartening to hear folks from Miami, especially Cuban folks, say, this felt right, this felt real, it didn't feel like a cliche or... I mean, because that's the other thing, is I'm worried about stereotype. I mean, you know, I'm very conscious of, like, I don't want the people in the world, the millions and gazillions of people who are going to read this book. As
only?
I'm sure there will be. Yeah, exactly. Only? Yeah, okay, because, billions.
I mean, I'm working to get it on one of the spaceships.
Perfect.
Yeah, because I feel other planets and multiverses need to find this
Thank
work
you. Let's
too.
call Elon Musk. He'll help us. Yes.
We're on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't want people to be like, oh, well, that's what Cubans are like.
But we kind of are.
In the way that sometimes, you know, people get painted into a box.
Oh my God, now that you said, I totally, you pulled me back into the book when you talk about the stars.
Oh.
First of all, the fact that they're both called Estrella, because that is, like, I don't know any other culture that knows more than one person, or at least even one person whose name is Star, like Estrella, and it's always Estrellita. It's never Estrella, it's Estrellita. But I loved that how it was like, they, you know, I'm not giving anything away by saying it's a lesbian couple.
Yeah.
How it's kind of like everybody's cool with them, everybody's friends with it, we just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, again, dropped into like, these are my people. This is the culture that I know. This is
Right.
who we are.
Right.
And it's something so small and, in the grand scheme of the book, so throwaway. Because it's not part of the plot. It's not, anything like that. But it's those little damn details that speaks to, like, damn it, she knows us.
Well, I did steal their name from my lovely stepmom, whose name is Estrellita.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just love the name. I love that we have Estrella as a name. You do. It's true that Anglos don't usually use star.
No.
The closest you get is Stella. You get Stella.
Okay, true.
Right, which is, and it makes me think, here's my literary reference for the podcast, Tennessee Williams.
Of course.
Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah.
Stella for Star.
Come on.
Yeah. But yeah, they were really fun to write. And I thought they were kind of an interesting moment in the book because they sort of bring in this very classically Cuban element of the belief in Santeria.
Yes.
But also this idea of like, well, we're not into that. Really? Everybody has some little connection to it. And that judgmental thing, but with the acceptance underneath.
Yep.
And then that kind of like complicated ball of... I'm okay with this, I'm not okay with this, but I'm kind of okay with this.
Right.
Including everything from the religion to their sexual orientation.
Oh, yeah. It's, I'm sure you're very familiar with Que Pasa USA.
Yeah.
And I always think of whenever anybody talks about Santeria, the Santeria episode where I think it's Carmencita asks her dad, like, ¿Tú crees en Santeria? And he's like, yo no creo en eso, pero lo respeto, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's that thing of like, no, that's not real. But just in case. In case of the flies, we're gonna, we're gonna hedge our bets here,
Yeah, exactly. And, interestingly, there's a plot point that happens after they visit that's, might not have been the case if they hadn't visited.
This is true.
Yeah.
This is true, which is why I always say, lesbians are the backbone of society.
There you go.
Yes, absolutely. Without them, we would not have Pride or Home Depot. I can say that I'm gay.
You're like, I have the card.
I have the card. I'm waving the flag.
My ID card right here.
The community allows it.
Yeah.
So, we talked about the book, and I was like, but what inspired you? Because I think so many people. I'm going to write a book. I have a book in me, and I do think a lot of people do have that in them, right? But it's one thing to have that in you. It's another thing to sit down and put pen to paper and then feel that you're vulnerable. You're okay with being vulnerable enough to put it out into the world, right? Because you're published, but I'm sure there was a lot of, thank you, but no thank you. We're not looking for something like this right now.
Yeah.
At what point did you say, this is living inside of me and I just got to get it out? And what was like the impetus for that?
It started as a short story, actually. I wrote a short story about Monica. And her mom was like mentioned in it, she was there kind of in the periphery. But it was about when she first found out she was pregnant with Robert's baby. And it was about her kind of accepting, what's happening in my life. What am I going to do with my life? I'm having a kid with this guy, et cetera, et cetera. And he was a slightly different character, but he was in it too. Okay. I published that short story, and then I was like, okay, yay, I got it published, great, moving on to like another story. And then I couldn't move on. I just couldn't stop thinking about her. And the mom, which was like, had been sort of on the periphery, she just kind of kept coming into my head. And I thought, oh my God, I think I want to keep writing about them, And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to write a second story about them or what. So I just kind of kept fooling around, and I realized, what if something, fiction is made from problems, right? Stories, there is no story if there's no problem. So I was like, all right, well, what can the problem be? Well, her mom could be really ill. And I stole something out of real life. My oldest and bestest bestie's mom had a really severe heart issue. And I thought, well, what if Mirta has something like that? How would that affect Monica? How would it affect the family? So I started writing that. And then I also remembered something out of my own real life, which is that when I was in my early 20s, my mom confessed to me that she had been married to another man before my father. And I never knew that. Wow. Like my whole life, I thought my dad was her first husband, you know? Yeah. And it was like, what? And it was shocking, and it was like a little unnerving, I'm not going to lie, And like I still remember the night she told me, I remember what I did that night. I remember that I went over to a friend's house and we were hanging out and just feeling really strange, Like I didn't feel like I'm a whole new person as a result of hearing this. But I did feel like I am different.
Really?
I am different now than I was 6 hours ago before Mom told me that she had like a wedding with like a wedding dress and wedding pictures. She's like, yeah, I have an engagement picture and blah, blah, blah. And she told me about the guy. They'd only been married for like, I think they stayed together maybe a year. He was really problematic, alcoholic, abusive, the whole nine.
Okay.
But my parents' wedding picture, like their classic wedding photo, is just of my mom in like a little tailored, like, I think it's yellow dress, and my dad in a suit. And I was thinking, like, they just had a super low-key wedding because they didn't have any money, or that was their vibe, or, whatever, a combination of the two. Like,
you never thought too much about it?
Never. But now I knew, it's because that was her second marriage. She wasn't going to do the whole veil and white dress, and her parents wouldn't have allowed it. Her parents were super into the first guy and did the whole nine with the first guy. So my dad was this second marriage, and I got to thinking, like, well, what if Mirta has a secret that she reveals to Monica, but is something deeper and much more devastating? What would that feel like? And once I had the secret, I was like, oh my God, I'm writing a novel. And here we go.
You don't have to answer it. And if you don't want to answer it, I can edit this out. But I find it interesting. You were just telling us, like, your mother confessed to you that she'd been married before, and that you felt different, right? Like, you specifically felt different. Like, obviously in the novel, the secret that's revealed is very different than what you just revealed. Yeah. And so it has more, I think, of an impact on Monica, right? Yeah. Direct, obviously. And I'm tap dancing so hard around the plot, right? Why is it that you think it hit you so hard that your mom had this experience before you, right? Because obviously it did. I mean, it influenced the novel, ultimately. What was it about that? I'm curious because I always... Again, we're Latinos, so I'm going to liken it to like a novela. But it always, like when I watch soap operas, it always makes me think of like these people who all of a sudden find out that, they were adopted. Exactly. And now all of a sudden, like the next episode, they're calling their new parents like mom and dad. And I'm like, no, this is not like in my mind, I'm always like, that's not how it works, right? Yeah. But you are telling me that it did affect you. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious how. And again, we don't have to get into it if you don't want to, but...
No, it's okay, yeah.
But obviously it did, because it influenced the writing of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it was I've lived my whole life up to now, and I wasn't like... I was in my early, maybe mid-20s. But that feels like a life, at that point. Oh, yeah. You're like, I've been alive for 20-something years, and I had no clue. Like, it just... that's part of my story now, as it turns out. Going back to that idea of storytelling, the fact that my mother married this man who, I didn't even know existed, had a whole life with him, had a courtship, had an engagement, did all the like classic things that you do when you get married, and certainly back in the day, where it's all very like traditional, and you take these pictures and you do this, blah, 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 blah. She had that whole, and she had a whole relationship, in other words. She had a whole person in her life, a man in her life who was really important to her that I didn't know about. And and the thing is that like I knew about her, everybody's parents tells them different amounts of things about their young lives. I thought my mother had told me everything. That's what it was. Okay. I knew about her super duper important high school, or maybe it was like, I think it was in high school, boyfriend who she was very in love with. Or maybe, it wasn't high school. It was her early 20s. I thought that was like the big guy that wasn't my father, who had had her heart. And then she met my father, and it was like, But it turns out there's this other dude, Right. So it was that. It's the weird thing where when you find out things about your parents' lives from before they had you, it almost makes you feel uncomfortable in the world. You're like, my world is shaken. My worldview. This is not what I thought the world was. I think change unnerves us in any way, any kind of chaos. And I felt a little bit like I think I'm just now realizing this literally. Maybe a sense of betrayal. Mm-hmm. Like, how could you not have told me that? Why did you, why not tell me until now? Why couldn't she have told me when I was 8, 9, 10, you know, whatever age would have been appropriate.
Right.
Like when she told me about the other man in her life who she had been in love with before my father, that relationship didn't work out. He was Jewish. Her parents would never have gone for that, yada, yada, yada. Why not throw in, and by the way, you know, I was married to this dude named John, whatever his last name was. I know his first name. I can't remember his last name. And the answer for her was that she was ashamed, I think.
Right.
Because that was a messy, toxic, yucky.
Right.
I think if she had, you know, if she could rewrite her story, she would erase. Delete, delete, delete.
Yeah, by extension of not telling you, she was trying to omit it from her life.
Yes.
If she didn't share it with you, who is, I'm going to assume, one of, if not the most important person in her life, probably you and your sister,
Yeah.
then it's not real.
Yeah.
If I say it out loud to the girls, this really happened, and I have to like sit in it, even if it's for a minute, and I so want to put that behind me.
Yeah.
And so I get why she wouldn't.
Yeah. And she did. She had put it behind her for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And then that night, for whatever reason, I can't remember what we must have been talking about something, and she just let it out. You know?
Life's funny that way.
I
Things just
know.
pop up when you least
They
expect
just-
it, right?
You never know. You might be wheeling your mom into emergency surgery, and she might say something.
She might see something
A little unnerving.
insane, as in your novel,
Yeah.
as in your novel.
Yeah.
So I mean, it started off as a short story, and you pulled elements, and again, I think that's why it reads so authentically, because you didn't just kind of hole yourself up somewhere and start pulling things out of thin air. You started incorporating actual experiences that either you lived or you knew people who lived through, and so you know, vicariously you could bring that in. What was the actual experience like once you decided, okay, I'm going to write this? At what point do you say, I've now written this novel, you know what, I'm going to try and sell this thing. I'm going to try, because I mean, again, somebody who works in marketing and who does the sponsorship for the show, and who like I know what it is to kind of go out there and have to be like, this is why this is awesome, and you should believe in us. And for all the empowerment that can come with it, there's also a lot of like, why the fuck am I doing this?
Oh God!
Right?
And imposter syndrome is.
Oh my
real.
God! I was gonna mention imposter syndrome because you had mentioned, you know, the fact that you're half Anglo, half Cuban American. I'm you know, I'm sure that also crept into your mind as you were writing this. Like you said, am I the person to tell this story?
Absolutely.
By the way, you are. But you know, what was that experience like?
Yeah.
Because I mean, girl, you were Simon and Schuster.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not bury the lead here. You know, like almost 35 minutes in, your book is published by one of, if not the biggest publishers in the world. Okay, Simon and Schuster. Like when I got that email from your publicist and I saw Simon and Schuster, I was like, okay. I was like, go on, girl. Like, yes, all right, our people, we shall overcome. Like, I was like, we've made it to the mountaintop, right? Like
Totally.
all of it. So, you know,
Yeah.
what was that whole experience like? I mean, at what moment did you say, fuck yeah, this is good?
This is happening.
No, fuck yeah, this is good, and people need to read this.
Yeah. I think it probably, honestly, it was when my editor said, fuck yes, this is good. People need to read this.
Okay.
You know, when she...
So the editor's was not with the publishing company? You had an editor?
No, she is. So, okay, there's a funny story here.
Okay.
And by funny, I mean like strange. And also like a little bit, yeah, tough. This is, it's going to get a little dark for a second.
Oh, no. All right.
Okay. I had a very good friend, my friend Nina Riggs, who the book is dedicated to, along with my parents. Nina passed away at age 39 from metastatic breast cancer in 2017. Before she passed away, she wrote a gorgeous, listen to me, listeners, you have to get this book. Now I'm promoting her book, for real, a gorgeous memoir called The Bright Hour. And it is the only cancer memoir that is going to make you pee your pants. Because it's funny as hell. It's also what you expect. It is dark. You know, spoiler alert, the main character dies.
Right.
Okay? So, just saying.
That's how we keep the levity going here.
Yeah, totally. You know, but it's great. And she wrote it about the year that she was diagnosed in 15. She died in 17, and it's about those 2 years. I'm in it. My husband's in it. My kids are in it. You know, our friend group is in it. And it's amazing. And it was published by Simon & Schuster. And the editor was Mary Cerrucci, who is my editor.
Okay.
And Nina's agent is Brittany Bloom, who is also my agent.
Got it.
So the story is that I met Brittany, my agent, when Nina was ill. We met in hospice. This is, again, we're going dark, but we will go light in a second, I promise. And after Nina passed, she died in February. The book was published in June, so she never saw the final copy. She did see an early galley, but she never saw the hard copy, final copy. When the book was released, we all came together and we did various. They asked me to write an essay about her. They asked me to help with promo, et cetera, et cetera. So, and my agent Brittany and my editor Mary Sue, they both came down to North Carolina to go to Nina Services. That's when I met Mary Sue. And we kind of bonded, obviously, over this experience. Nina was unbelievable, like literally one of the coolest people in my life, and in most people's lives who knew her. So they knew I was writing a book.
Okay.
I actually had a terrifying moment at the Greensboro airport where we were drinking in the airport bar waiting for their flight to New York after Nina's service, and Mary Sue Rucci of Simon & Schuster leans over and says to me, "So what's your book about?" I mean, right. Like a writer's dream moment, and also like I think all the blood in my body just went to my little toe of my right foot. And I'm like, oh, it's about a young woman, Cuban American from Miami.
Talk about mixed emotions, right? Like you just had a service, now you've been drinking, and you're ambushed with this question.
Absolutely,
like,
you know. The question that, of course, every writer in the world wants, you know. But yeah, I panicked, gave her like 7 elevator pitches. Like we could have been, it was like, you know, going to the top of the Empire State Building is how long that elevator ride was. It was awful. And, you know, that was in 17. In like 2 years later, I'm working on this novel. Whoops.
The wind kicked up.
And it was Nina's husband who said, and Nina's agent had said to me, you know, you should show me your novel. And I was like, okay. And it was Nina's husband, who I'm still very good friends with, who we were hanging out one night, and he's like, when are you going to show Brittany, the agent, a draft of your novel? And I was like, oh, you know, I just need to do one more revision. I need to, you know, really fluff the pillows on chapter 10 or whatever I said. And he leaned into me, no kidding, and he goes, what the fuck are you doing? Yeah. He's like, that's the friendliest read in New York. You're being an idiot. Show it to Brittany. So I put on my big girl pants. I shoved the imposter syndrome into the closet, locked the door, and texted her and said, John Duberstein made me promise that I would send you this thing. Can I send you my novel? And she's like, sure. And I sent it to her, and I honestly didn't think that she was reading it as an agent for potentially looking for a client. I thought what we were doing was probably her taking a look and giving me some feedback maybe. Okay. Hey, I have some suggestions, blah, blah, blah. And then maybe probably saying, you know who I think might be a cool agent for this once you get these revisions done? You know, fulana mengana, whatever.
Like she was being nice. She was going to be just because you were friends and you had lost a friend, so you have this commonality. Right.
Absolutely. And a few days later, I was blow drying my hair. I'm multitasking. I'm a parent. We never do one thing at a time. Parents always do like 3 things at one time, especially if you're Cuban because you're always late to everything.
There you go.
I'm blow drying my hair and I'm checking email, and there's an email from a person who is now my agent saying, oh my God, I loved your book. In fact, you know what? That was probably the moment. She said, I absolutely loved it. And what's the exact line? I absolutely loved it. And I would love to be your agent. And I dropped the telephone.
Wow.
I freaked out completely and dropped the phone on the ground. And my husband's like, are you okay? Like from the other room. And I couldn't even speak. I just turned off the blow dryer and walked in there and showed him the phone. And then he just gave me a giant hug. And then she said, and Mary Sue, my editor, had been asking behind the scenes, is Tita working on her novel still? And Brittany had taken me on as a client by then. And Mary Sue said, and this is like a little bit inside baseball, but in the publishing industry, normally your agent, it's called taking it out, or I don't know what the term is, they send it to a bunch of editors.
Okay, like trying to find who's
fishing.
interested.
You
Right,
go
right.
fishing,
Yeah,
exactly, and
yeah.
you see what bites you get back, right? But every once in a while, an editor will say, can I have like first dibs, basically?
Okay.
And we showed it to Mary Sue early and let her have first dibs. And what she said was, I want this. I want to work on it. It needs work. Like she saw that it was a project that she had a vision from the moment she saw it.
That's so important.
And she said, I would like to work on this if you would grant me that. And Brittany and I talked about it, and we decided not to go fishing because no matter what we came back with, even if somebody came back and said, I'm going to give you $50 million and, a house on Star Island, they're not going to give my book what Mary Sue Rucci was going to give my book. Number one, she's an incredible editor, and I knew that because I saw what she did with Nina's book. I knew how they worked together. I had some insider knowledge about her as a professional.
Right.
That for a writer is really, really valuable information. And then she got a hold of it and just did incredible things to it. She taught me stuff that I don't think anyone else could have taught me.
Right.
Yeah. So
and yet also respecting your voice and your vision, which is probably what we were talking about when you said how she was as a professional, and that's so interesting to me because so many times and we've actually had this conversation, Darian and I, where it's like, if this network was to come and be like, we want you to be part of it, would we say yes? Right. Wouldn't we? Because yes, there's the opportunity for exposure and this and that out the gate.
Yes.
But what's the long term?
Yes.
And do you understand what we're doing, or do you just want us to be another notch on your bedpost, right? So I'm hearing what you're saying, and I totally get it, especially when you're saying that she had a vision for it, right? You could have shown up to anybody else, Random House or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they would have been lovely. They probably would have, given you respect and courtesy and all of it. But that doesn't mean that they get the book.
Right.
That doesn't mean that if the book doesn't quote unquote do well after X amount of time, I don't know how long a publishing calendar is, they don't just kind of go like, well, whatever. Like, you want somebody who's going to believe in not just you, but the story, the characters, like which you're putting out into the world. Because, girl, you're an artist at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And the most vulnerable thing any artist can do is say to the world, here's this thing I created.
Oh, God, it's horrible.
Do you like it?
Yes, exactly. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. Like the fact that this book is actually in stores. Like the first event I did where I walked into a bookstore and they were strangers holding my book, I was like, okay, this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. Like this is not like me holding it or my husband holding it because I got some free copies that came to the house and now he's holding it. This is like a person I've never laid eyes on, whose name I do not know, and they're holding the thing that I made.
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's insane, yeah. In the best way possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
All right, Tita. Well, I'm going to start wrapping up because we've been talking for like almost an hour now.
I know.
It's like, no, and I love it because I'm that guy who's like, let's just keep going, but I know you've got... you're here in Miami. You probably have like family that you're gonna go see. I don't want to monopolize all your time. I've already taken up like 2 hours of it. I know this is like the dreaded question of anybody who creates things, but it's like, what's next? I know it's like the book is barely on the shelves, right?
Right.
But what's next? I mean, do you? I'm sure you have other stories in you because somebody who writes short stories, I think you're always kind of getting a character out into the world.
Right.
Do you already have thoughts, or are you just kind of basking in the moment right now of the awesomeness that is Tell It To Me singing?
Both. I'm trying to bask. I mean, I'm really trying to do that. I'm trying to like be present and like take it in and, not get to a month from now and think like, what just happened? What? Right. But I'm also, and for a while I've been thinking about like new projects, new characters. I have an idea, or I have an interest. I want to write about the idea of loss. Okay. I think the idea of, like, we hear a lot about loss of parents, loss of spouses, unfortunately, loss of children. But I don't know that our culture talks that much about the loss of the friend. So coming back to my experience with my friend Nina, I'm kind of interested in possibly writing about the idea of someone who loses her best friend, and making it funny, like a funny grief book, right? I'll stand in Nina's shadow in that way.
Right.
I'm interested in. I also have this. I have a secret little interest in the possibility of a story about someone who is a surrogate. For a friend. I thought about what would it be like if someone decided to be a surrogate, and people do this all the time, who already has her own children, has her own family, but is doing it for a friend, and just kind of what that vibe would feel like. Where like
It's a little more complicated.
Yeah, it can get a little complicated. I'm not sure if those two stories are part of the same story.
Okay.
That's a possibility. And then there's 80 pages of this novel that never saw the light of day. And they are about one of the characters who I can't talk too much about for fear of spoiler alerts.
Okay.
But one of those people who had been involved in some of those anti-Castro activities, etc.
Got it.
And I'm gonna see. I can. That person's voice is in my head in a way that feels really interesting, and he kind of won't stop talking. So he may end up somewhere somehow.
I love that.
Yeah.
No, and I love that. I love that because it also just offhand to me it speaks about your range as a writer, because this book is. For lack of I'm gonna like elevator pitch it, right? It's chick lit, right? Like it's aimed kind of down the middle at a female target audience more than anything.
Sure.
But what you're describing sounds to me like something so different, right? And so I think that just speaks to the talent that you have inside of you, that you're not just, this is my lane, I'm going to stick here. Like you are like, no, I can do anything and everything. And I have no doubt that that story is going to be as fantastic as this one.
No, I hope so. We'll see.
No, I know so. Don't question. I'm the host. We don't question the host.
We don't question the host.
Never.
Yeah.
So I know I said that was my last question.
Okay.
I lied. I have one more question because
I'm ready.
it's my show. Everything is being optioned nowadays for series and for TV. If Tell It To Me Singing was optioned, who would play Monica?
Oh my God. Oh, I hate that you did this to me. Okay.
It literally came to me as you were answering the other question. I'm like, you know what? I'll end on a like little dream casting.
Dream casting.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
Or is there another character that you immediately see? I mean, I said Monica because she's the protagonist, but
right.
if you know me, that would be,
right.
X.
Who would play Mirta, etc. That's a hard call, because Mirta is an interesting age where she's not super young, but she's not super old.
Right.
So, I'm going to get to the answer, but first I'm going to talk about the audiobook really quickly, simply because I want to say that the two women who play Mirta and Monica, or Monica and Mirta, in the audiobook are amazing actors themselves.
Awesome.
So,
do we know their names?
Yes, Frankie Corzo plays Monica, and Yareli Arizmendi plays Mirta, and they are gorgeous actors who do a phenomenal job. So, hey, that's always a possibility.
Why not? Let's keep that continuity alive.
Yeah. I think Frankie also does like film and TV acting. Don't quote me on that. Frankie, I'm sorry if you're listening, if you ever hear this, that I don't have this right off the top of my head. I know Yareli does. I don't know. What about, the problem is, of course I would want someone who's Cuban American.
Right.
For Monica.
Right.
And we don't have as many Cuban American actors out there as we want to have.
Right.
Who am I thinking of? Oh my gosh, what is her name? I'm blanking her name.
What is she in?
What's Wednesday's name?
Jenna Ortega.
Thank you, Jesus. You know what it was? Is that I was good. I kept thinking Jenny Lorenzo, who we were just talking about. Yeah, Jenna Ortega, who's not Cuban American, but can get it done, man.
Yeah.
She's amazing. And there's another actor who I just discovered, and I'm blanking her name too, because I'm on the spot and I'm terrible at thinking on the spot.
Toss out what she's in, what you saw her in.
She's a Bond girl.
Ana de Armas.
Yes.
Yes.
I could see
She played
her.
Marilyn Monroe in
she just played Marilyn.
in Blonde.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's actually a distant cousin of Darian's.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, super cool.
Yeah, they've never met, but it's one of those, like, their families are from the same little town in Cuba. And I think it's like her grandfather was the brother of his maternal grandfather.
Oh, wow.
Like, so they're like related. Like,
like
but
officially
but they
related.
don't know each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I have my... I would say Ana Villafañe would be great. She is a Cuban American. She's from Miami.
I need to know her.
She has done Broadway. She played Gloria on Broadway.
Oh, okay.
She's done Younger. She's done a whole bunch of stuff. She's on Broadway now again, doing a play with Holland Taylor. But I'm saying that for selfish reasons. Number one, because I love her, because I know her. And number two, because that's an excuse for her to come back on the show and talk about it.
Yes, absolutely.
Talk about, this project that I love and I hope, has all the success in the world.
Thank you.
Like, honestly, I'm always a little hesitant with books in particular when people reach out and are like, oh, do you want to interview the author? I'm always like, sure, but send me the book.
Right, yeah. That makes sense,
because
course.
Number one, I want to understand what I'm talking about, but my fear is always like, what if this thing is awful?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Like, and now I've committed to talking to this person, and it's like, I don't want to talk too much about the actual product, right? The end, the book, because it was horrible.
Right.
So you kind of have to tiptoe around it, and so I'm so happy that that's not the case here.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for writing a great book. That's, and making my job easier.
You're welcome. You know what? I will tell you one more person that I've been thinking of for years. And this is actually part of the story of this book, which is that it's taken me something like 13 years to write this book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't think you knew that.
No.
Yeah.
13 years.
Yeah. Because I've been a little busy being a parent.
I was going to say. Mom, professor,
pandemic, fun times.
That too.
Will slow you down.
That thing.
Yeah, and also writing is hard and writing is scary, and just putting it out there for all my fellow writers out there. Sometimes you have to erase that sentence 16 times before you feel okay with it. And I'm on Cuban time for everything, so of course I was going to take forever to write this thing.
See, most writers take 5 years. You're Cuban, so 13.
So
13.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I've thought of Eva Mendes the whole time. There's actually a scene that got cut from the book that, who knows, may appear in other projects, in which I have always envisioned. It's a scene of a young Mirta. I've envisioned Eva Mendes.
I was going to say, I feel like
role.
if we give Eva Mendes like maybe 10 more years, she can be Mirta.
Yeah, we need to give her time, though, because she looks amazing.
That's the
and
thing.
She's not Mirta's age.
She's older than we think she is.
Yeah.
I think she's like late 40s or like 50.
Yeah. I think she hit 50. Finally.
Yeah, she's not like 25.
Yeah, no.
You wouldn't know it to look at her.
No, I know.
But, and the best part about casting her is that then you can get free sponges from her company.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And she's doing the mushroom coffee now, too.
Oh, is that a thing, too?
Yeah.
Eva, we're trying to get you on the show, woman.
Yeah.
Come on. Swing by. Bring us some mushroom coffee and some sponges.
Next time you're in Miami.
Yeah, that's it. Whatever.
Yeah.
We'll bring the mitolín, you bring the sponge.
There you go.
Yes. Tita, it has been so much fun talking to
Same.
you, not just on air, but the whole hour and a half that we were talking before. Again, it's I was telling you before, like my favorite part of doing this show is the interviews. Yeah. When not all interviews, but I love all my interviews. Some are obviously just you click with people, and I love that we connected. I love that you're part of our world now, and
Same.
You can't get rid of us.
I have no plans to.
Just so you're aware, you're official Pero Primo now, or Pero Prima, and
I have the 2 T-shirts to prove it.
You do, yes. So thank you so much for swinging by, and next project, please let us know. We will be ringing that bell loud and proud.
Thank you. I'll be calling you and being like, you need to walk me through this imposter syndrome. Get me over the hump.
We will walk each other through that.
There you go. We'll do it together.
It is real, my friend.
We'll
it is absolutely real. Bueno, gracias. Un abrazo. I have loved having you on the show.
I've loved being here. Super fun.
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lamleplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.